watching the National News Desk, America's News Now.
We both agree on violent individuals should not remain in our country.
Voicing support, the cities and states vowing to help Trump with his deportation plan.
We'll take a look at TikTok. You know, I have a warm spot in my heart for TikTok.
Hanging in the balance, TikTok's case goes all the way to the Supreme Court. The fate of the app now weeks away. Plus, alarming allegations against Amazon. The new Senate report claiming executives ignored a recommendation, leading to more employee injuries. From the nation's capital, this is the National News Desk, America's News Now. I'm Dee Dee Gatton. Thank you for joining us. On this weekend edition, we take a look at the big headlines of the week, and we look ahead at what to expect, starting with the 4 big stories we've been following this week. Adding on charges, the second man who tried to assassinate Trump answers for his alleged actions. The future of the fight in Ukraine. President Biden tries to pass last-minute measures as President Trump-elect Trump vows to end the war. The Fed cutting interest rates again. How the auto industry is responding, and later to undeclared drugs found in a joint supplement, the dangerous cardiac side effects putting patients at risk. New details are trickling in about the upcoming mass deportation program. The Trump administration is now asking for help and citing a new wave of migrant crime as a key reason for the need. Here's national correspondent Christine Frizzell.
After this shocking video of alleged trained Aragua gang members in Aurora, Colorado went viral over the summer, some city officials later called it an isolated incident. The same apartment complex, though, where 16 suspected TDA members were arrested on Tuesday.
The victims were held against their will. They were actually bound, both the male and the female. They were pistol whipped, they were beat, they were victimized. They were terrorized. The incoming Trump administration blaming migrant crime on changes in immigration policy under President Biden, citing it as a key reason for the mass deportation program.
Day one will be ICE officers across the country will be out on the streets.
Incoming border czar Tom Homan already asking for help from the Department of Defense and from Congress.
I'm telling the minimum we need 100,000 beds because we got a big population to look for.
26 Republican governors voicing their support in a statement released through the Republican Governors Association stating, "We stand ready to utilize every tool at our disposal, whether through state law enforcement or the National Guard, to support President Trump in this vital mission." The ACLU warning that support could mean giving local law enforcement the green light to profile people of color or those who don't speak English, as some Democratic governors vow to fight back.
We have laws on the books in the state of Illinois. I'm proud of those laws that protect people who are undocumented here.
But other Democrats say they plan to work with Tom Homan, at least when it comes to deporting criminals.
We both agree on violent individuals should not remain in our country. We have laws here in the city on how that could be handled. My legal team is going to sit down with his legal team to make the determination if an executive order can change that.
Those changes will almost certainly be met with legal challenges every step of the way. Those on both sides of the debate already gearing up for the fight. I'm Christine Frizzell for the National News Desk.
More legal trouble for the man accused of trying to assassinate President-elect Donald Trump in Florida. On top of the federal charges, the state of Florida is charging Ryan Routh with attempted murder for his role in a car crash that nearly killed a 6-year-old girl during the chase to apprehend him, according to prosecutors. The federal charges Routh already faces include attempted assassination, assaulting a federal officer, and multiple gun charges. Routh has pleaded not guilty to all federal charges. President Biden probably won't be able to spend the remaining aid that Congress okayed to send weapons to Ukraine. According to the Department of Defense, it would be a challenge to rush out the $5.6 billion before President-elect Trump takes over. Whether the Trump administration would continue the funds is a big question. He has also vowed to end the war quickly. 2 men have been charged in connection to a deadly drone strike in Jordan. 3 U.S. service members were killed and dozens were injured last year. Mahdi Mohammed Sadeghi, a dual U.S. Iranian citizen, and Mohammed Abedi-Ini of Iran were charged with violating U.S. export laws. An analysis of a drone from the the attack showed that it used a navigation system manufactured by Abedini's company. If convicted, both face up to 20 years in prison. Amazon allegedly dismissed data linking quotas to elevated injury rates. That's according to a new report from the Senate Committee on Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions. The committee found internal documents showed health and safety personnel recommended relaxing the enforcement of production quotes in an effort to reduce injuries. According to the Senate investigation, senior executives ignored the recommendations. The report also found injury rates at Amazon were nearly twice the average for the rest of the industry. An Amazon spokesperson denies these claims, adding that the internal documents were previously found to be invalid. And a new twist in the future of TikTok. The Supreme Court has agreed to hear arguments about whether a new national security law that could end up banning TikTok in the U.S. violates the First Amendment. National correspondent Atra El-Nashar has a look at what happens next.
1 month from Thursday, TikTok may be history, at least in the U.S., the result of a national security law requiring the app to be spun off from its Chinese parent company, ByteDance. In a Hail Mary, TikTok turned to the Supreme Court, asking justices to decide if the law violates free speech. The court will hear arguments on January 10th. 9 days later is the deadline for TikTok to be sold. The following day, January 20th, President-elect Trump will be sworn in at noon. The court will decide on the day of arguments whether to pause the January 19th deadline. The chairman of the House Select Committee on the Chinese Communist Party, Republican John Molinar, says he's confident the court will make clear that foreign adversaries like the Chinese Communist Party do not have a constitutional right to weaponize social media applications against the American people. Molinar went on to say he's eager to help Trump negotiate a deal to make TikTok an American-owned company. Trump, who supported a TikTok ban during his first term but has since embraced the app, said this Monday.
We'll take a look at TikTok. You know, I have a warm spot in my heart for TikTok because I won youth by 34 points.
Adam Kovacevic, founder and CEO of Chamber of Progress, a left-leaning tech industry coalition, explains one scenario that could occur after Trump takes office and if the Supreme Court delays the sale deadline.
The law allows any president to basically certify that the company has done what's called a qualified divestiture. So like certify that they have sold themselves to another entity. There's an open question about whether, Trump might try to exploit some loophole there to try to keep TikTok operating in the U.S.
A true sale of TikTok seems far out of the realm of possibility because the Chinese government has the power to block it. If Trump becomes more vocal in his support for TikTok, we'll be watching to see if Republicans in Congress who supported the ban let go of their national security concerns to stay in line with the leader of their party. In Washington, I'm Atra El-Nashar for the National News Desk, America's News Now.
Industry analysts predict car sales will rise to their highest level in 5 years, estimating anywhere from 16.2 to 16.3 million sales. The U.S. hit 17 million in 2019, but the pandemic, supply chain issues, and high interest rates plummeted those numbers. Entry-level and lower-priced vehicles are expected to lead the charge in the coming year. Edmunds reports the average new vehicle price in 2024 was $47,465. Renters in the U.S. spent an extra $3.8 billion last year because of pricing algorithms used by landlords. That's according to a new analysis from the White House Council of Economic Advisors. The report puts real numbers to accusations against RealPage, a software that allows landlords to collectively push rents higher, according to the DOJ. The report found those living in buildings using the algorithm spent $70 more a month on average. But some cities headed worse. In Atlanta, renters spent $181 more a month. Denver, Dallas, and Washington, D.C. weren't far behind. Lawmakers on Capitol Hill are calling out credit card companies for unfair treatment. Janae Bowens with the Fact Check team joining us now. So lawmakers are accusing these credit card companies of charging small businesses more than large corporations in fees. Yeah. Tell us more, and then also how are the credit card companies responding?
Yeah, Dee Dee. So in some cases they are. During a recent Senate hearing, Senator Josh Hawley pointed out the disparity between how much credit card companies are charging in fees for large corporations corporations versus small businesses. Now, Visa and MasterCard say corporations can negotiate lower interchange fees and small businesses can't.
And just to clarify, the interchange fees, you probably know them as swipe fees. What's the average amount?
Yeah, so that interchange fee is a set fee that a business pays the credit card company when a customer uses their card to make a purchase. Now, the average swipe fee for a credit card transaction is around 2% of the transaction value, but it can be as high as 4%, and that's according to Investopedia.
And Janae, if small business owners aren't satisfied with that interchange fee, that rate, it sounds like there aren't many options.
Yeah, Visa and MasterCard control 86% of the market. That's according to Statista, so small business owners don't really have a choice.
Right, Janae, thank you. And later on, Janae, we'll be back to break down credit card companies' profit margins and the amount of debt Americans are struggling to repay on their credit cards. An urgent recall for a joint pain supplement that the FDA says contains 2 undeclared drugs that can be potentially harmful. The agency found diclofenac and dexamethasone in GN Mart's Force Forever tablets. The first can increase the risk of cardiovascular events. The second, the FDA warns, can impair the ability to fight off infections. Consumers are asked to return the product. And new information, the FDA is warning companies against selling unapproved weight loss drugs. The agency sent letters to 4 online companies it said sold unapproved GLP-1 drugs, including semaglutide. That's used in the popular medications Ozempic and Wegovy. The FDA has repeatedly cracked down on unapproved, misbranded, and counterfeit versions of the drug. The companies have 15 days to address the concerns or risk possible legal action. So to come on the National News Desk, America's News Now. Announcing his agenda, Trump holds his first news conference since becoming president-elect. What his press secretary had to say about his plans. And later, the future of work. Whether you're looking for a new gig or just happy where you are, the trends that could impact your job heading into the new year. This week, Donald Trump laid out his vision for America in his first news conference since winning the election. Our Jen Jeffcoat sat down with incoming White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt with some of the top takeaways.
I want to start with what President-elect Trump said about restoring our nation to full prosperity. Of course, one of the top issues for voters, he said preparations right now are underway to slash massive job-killing regulations. What are some of the reforms we can expect?
President Trump is going to unleash his America First economic agenda on day one, within minutes of taking the Oval Office. Much of that can be done with executive action. And as President Trump promised on the campaign trail, he's going to do a few things for the American people and the American worker. 1, slash regulation. You heard him talk about that yesterday. Push a massive deregulatory agenda. For every new regulation on the books in the United States, President Trump and his administration are going to slash 10. Secondly, unleashing our energy independence. In his first term, we were an energy dominant country. That has changed over the past 4 years, which is why we've been dealing with record high inflation. So on day one, President Trump will take executive action to fast track permits for fracking and for drilling to get this economy moving again and bring down the cost of living for the American people everywhere from the gas pump to the grocery store. And then thirdly, he's going to use the leverage of the United States to start negotiating good deals again. You've already seen him do this as president-elect, putting out statements when it comes to tariffs. You saw Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau flying to Mar-a-Lago within minutes of President Trump putting that statement out. And then lastly, but arguably most importantly of all, tax relief. It's something President Trump campaigned on. This is something we'll have to move through Capitol Hill, but we have the Senate, we have the House, and we're confident President Trump can sign the largest tax cuts in history again, like he did in his first term.
He called this press conference at Mar-a-Lago to announce a major $100 billion investment by Japanese company SoftBank. Where will we see these investments, and how many American jobs will this create?
That's right. Yesterday's press conference was great news for the American people. President Trump and the CEO of SoftBank announcing a $100 billion investment in the United States of America in the AI space. So critical infrastructure in AI, which of course is the future. And we need to ensure that we are building that infrastructure here at home and hiring American workers to do it. And that was also part of the promise yesterday, that the CEO of SoftBank will hire 100,000 American workers. And in true President Trump fashion, you saw him negotiating on live television, asking the CEO to double down, make it $200 billion. I bet President Trump will get what he wants when it comes to that promise on behalf of the American people.
Speaking of getting what he wants, he did say federal workers who don't come back to the office will be dismissed. How will he get around reversing what the Biden administration has done? Because Biden, as we know, made a deal with the unions. Now, the union president is saying collective bargaining agreements entered into by the federal government are binding and enforceable.
Well, not until the new sheriff comes to town. Things are going to change in Washington, D.C. The American people are sick and tired of seeing bureaucrats in Washington who don't even show up for work, living off of their taxpayer-funded salaries. Our federal government is way too expensive, way too big, way too burdensome. All Americans agree with that. And that's why President Trump has created DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, which will be an outside organization that serves to consult the government and advise them on ways that we can cut back on waste. One of them is getting rid of this massive federal workforce, or scaling it back significantly, I should say. And this will, of course, be led by Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy, two highly respected businessmen in their own rights who have run multi-billion-dollar companies and know what they're doing when it comes to slashing waste and getting the government moving.
Until the new sheriff comes into town, the current sheriff, Biden, in his final weeks, also trying to sell off pieces of the border wall. When will Trump begin construction again on the wall? And tell us more about his deportation plans now.
It's an immediate priority for President Trump to restart construction of the border wall, and it is despicable that the current commander-in-chief, Joe Biden, has been selling that very useful material that he knows President Trump is going to want to use for pennies on the dollar. As President Trump said yesterday, this border wall was constructed and designed by the Border Patrol agents themselves. It is specifically designed to prevent illegal border crossings, which is one of the greatest problems our country is facing right now. We've had a surge of more than 20 million illegal people over the past 4 years. It's crumbling our infrastructure in our inner cities. It's led to a surge in violent migrant crime across the country. And it's unacceptable that the current President Joe Biden is doing this. President Trump is going to reverse course on day one. He will continue construction of the border wall. He's going to begin the mass deportation efforts that he promised. And the way to do that is to empower federal and local law enforcement to work together to identify the criminals in our American communities and send them home.
And you can view the full interview plus more top stories online all the time at thenationaldesk.com. Up next, authorities bust a sophisticated $1 million car theft ring. The year-long investigation out of Massachusetts, plus information on the loose. Rhode Island residents' personal data now at risk after a ransomware attack on a state agency. This is the National News Desk, America's News Now. We have reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering issues that matter to you. From a massive data break impacting Rhode Island residents to criminals targeting seniors in Washington. We're taking the pulse of America, but we are starting with a luxury car ring busted in Massachusetts.
A year-long investigation in Massachusetts led to a dozen arrests, all accused of teaming up in a sophisticated high-end car theft ring. Police armed with search warrants went to addresses in Brockton, Fall River, and Easton to make arrests and gather evidence, including firearms and high-capacity magazines. 63 vehicles were stolen, valued at more than $2.6 million. The group allegedly used a programming device which would turn blank key fobs into fully functioning keys in a matter of minutes.
Do you think this also shows that the advancement of technology is maybe making it easier for people to commit huge crimes like this?
Technology is obviously something that we don't hear about every day, but in that underground world, these are the tools of the trade.
A line outside the Department of Human Services on Reservoir Avenue Monday morning. Those who qualify for services like SNAP benefits, Medicaid, and HealthSource RI are left wondering what will happen to their personal information.
I feel like we're already at our lowest. I mean, we're reaching out for help, so I feel like it's kind of a hit below the belt for those that are already reaching out for help.
State leaders announced over the weekend the RI bridge system had been hacked on December 5th. Websites associated with the services shut down. Sensitive information like social security numbers, banking information, and EBT card logins are at risk.
My social security number or whatever the case may be, they could be using it in committing crimes. You know, and something happened, I could get stopped and have warrants for something that, you know, doesn't involve me. So it's a ripple effect. The ripple effect is tremendous.
Leaders warning people to take action, like freezing EBT benefits, using two-step verification, and using a credit monitoring service.
It's horrific. It's just terrible that it's become like this, and especially to our older folks to beat up on older people.
The 3 victims were targeted in parking lots at shopping centers in different areas of Gig Harbor.
And I know personally a poor little gal, she's an elderly little gal, and whatever, sure enough, someone was sitting there watching and looking and staring, and sure enough, she got it ripped off.
Police say all 3 victims had their purses stolen by force, and one victim was shoved to the ground, breaking her nose.
They're looking for an easy mark. They're looking for an easy target, somebody that's vulnerable, somebody that might not be really aware of their surroundings.
As parking lots fill up for Christmas shopping, police are asking everyone to keep their valuables out of view and keep an eye on anything out of the ordinary, even in places you wouldn't expect.
Especially here in lovely Gig Harbor.
And still ahead, Money Talks. GoFundMe reveals the year in giving, what the fastest growing category for fundraisers was this year. The top fundraiser on GoFundMe this year reflects a major pain point for millions of Americans: inflation. The company's annual report shows the number of fundraisers this year to cover the cost of food, rent, and other basic living expenses quadrupled compared to 2023. Another top campaign was not a need, but an expensive want: fundraisers to buy tickets for the Eras Tour. Meantime, the fastest growing category was campaigns to send athletes to the 2024 Olympics. Whether you are looking for a new job next year or plan to stay put, we are tracking the workplace trends for 2025. from AI to developing better interactions on the job. The National News Desk, Angelo has more.
3 workplace trends to eye for 2025. 7 workplace trends that will define success next year. A flurry of information from human resources and business experts to career sites like LinkedIn, posting its big ideas for 2025 when LinkedIn says AI will really hit.
Digital double, so your email's being written for you in the morning when you start the day. Contracts already analyzed when you start a meeting. Like AI starts doing stuff for you next year.
The Society of Human Resource Management says more employees will work from home, while at the same time companies will invest more in health, hygiene, and safety, like installing state-of-the-art ventilation systems on the job. Workplace environment expert Maya Radcliffe says leaders also need to focus on team building to keep workers.
Whether it's playing bingo or doing a fluid art night or everybody bring an appetizer to work day, people want to feel a connection, and there's many ways that leadership can help their team and their employees feel welcomed in the workplace.
And look for the rise of corporate influencers, corporations hiring people, internal influencers to go on social media and to tell people how great it is to work at the company or even do a day in the life. That's according to LinkedIn. In Washington, D.C., I'm Angela Brown.
Ahead in our next half hour, worker safety or straight surveillance. The grocery giant testing body cameras within its stores. Plus, a popular kids product recalled for risk of burns. The action needed now to stop your child from getting hurt. You're watching the National News Desk, America's News Now. You can catch us live weekdays from 6 a.m. to 11 a.m. and 10 p.m. to midnight Eastern Time, and anytime online at thenationaldesk.com. We'll be right back. You're watching the National News Desk, America's News Now.
The economy is strong overall and has made significant progress toward our goals over the past 2 years.
The Dow plummets after the Fed cuts interest rates again. How business owners are betting Trump will alter the economy. And 2024, the year of food recalls. We break down the numbers plus the reason behind the troubling trend. And later, hack attack our investigation into inaction from Facebook after countless users had their accounts stolen. From the nation's capital, this is the National News Desk, America's News Now. I'm Dee Dee Gatton, and this week the Federal Reserve cut interest rates by 1/4 point in its final meeting of the year. Since inflation has been stubbornly high lately, the Fed now signals only 2 rate cuts next year instead of the 4 it originally predicted. National correspondent Atra Elnishar has more on the economic road ahead.
The cost of borrowing coming down just a bit more.
The committee decided to lower the target range for the federal funds rate by 1/4 percentage point to 4.25% to 4.5%.
The Federal Reserve's rate cut comes even after a series of higher than expected inflation reports, robust retail sales in November, and a steady stream of data showing a strong jobs market.
There's nothing compelling the Fed to cut interest rates at this point, but what they want is to get interest rates a little bit closer to that neutral level. Now that inflation has come down and is still just a little bit below the 3% mark, they don't want those high interest rates to derail what's otherwise a pretty strong economy.
The Fed won't meet again until after President-elect Trump takes office. And since inflation has been so stubborn lately, they're not expected to make another rate cut at their next meeting. And that could make Trump even more vocal about his disdain for Chair Powell, who he hand-selected for the job in 2017. In 2019, Trump tweeted, "Who is our bigger enemy, Jay Powell or Chairman Xi?" Earlier this month, Trump said he has no plans to fire Powell. Powell said even if he was asked to resign, he'd refuse.
What makes central banks around the world effective is their independence from political influence.
For the private sector, political influence in their favor is exactly what many executives are looking for. A new survey from consulting firm Teneo asked 300 CEOs around the world what they expect from a second Trump administration. And 64% expect that potentially disruptive Trump administration policies like new tariffs and regulation cuts will ultimately help their businesses in 2025. But as the Fed proved Wednesday, future economic conditions are never a sure thing.
We're not on any preset course.
In Washington, I'm Atra El-Nashar for the National News Desk, America's News Now.
New details. Some Walmart employees are now wearing body cameras as part of a pilot program at U.S. stores. A company spokesperson told CNBC the program is being tested in one market. Walmart wants to use the tech for worker safety, not as a loss prevention tool, according to a person familiar with the program. Yodo is re-announcing a recall of its mini speakers for children due to burn and fire hazards. According to the Consumer Product Safety Commission, the speaker's lithium-ion battery can overheat and catch fire. The company has gotten 9 reports from U.S. consumers and 3 from the UK of the speaker overheating or melting. So far, no injuries have been reported. You can contact Yodo for a free battery replacement kit. From carrots to eggs to ice cream, this year it feels like there's been one food recall after another. According to FDA data, food and cosmetic recalls have nearly doubled since 2012, and this year saw the highest level since before the pandemic. The rise can be partially blamed on a boom in ready-to-eat and prepackaged meals. Those foods are often consumed without additional cooking, which helps kill listeria. Food production has also become more globalized, creating more opportunities for contamination along the supply chain. The Biden administration plans to ban China telecommunications in the U.S. This is the first step against China for a broad hack of American telecom firms. The Commerce Department deemed China Telecom Americas a U.S. security threat. A final ban will likely be left to the incoming Trump administration.
We need to start changing behaviors on the other side rather than just constantly having this kind of escalation of their offense and our defense. The Colonial Pipeline hack was another key point.
Potential National Security Advisor Congressman Mike Waltz refers to a surveillance effort by Chinese hackers uncovered over the summer. Major credit card companies are in the hot seat after senators on Capitol Hill questioned their business models and accused them of having a duopoly on the market. Janae Bowens from the Fact Check team joins us now. So which part of Visa and MasterCard's business models are lawmakers specifically targeting?
Yeah, Didi. So Senator Josh Hawley criticized Visa and MasterCard for their interchange fees, which are sometimes larger for small businesses and smaller for large corporations.
Yeah, on that side of things, how much are these companies' profit margins? I know that they are soaring.
Exactly. So Visa and MasterCard say they're making net profit margins of more than 50%. According to an NYU report, the average net profit margin for businesses across industries in the U.S. is around 7%, with 5% considered low, 10% considered healthy, and 20% considered high.
Yeah, wow. It really puts things in perspective, that comparison. Considering how much these credit card companies are actually making, how much credit card debt are Americans carrying?
Yeah, so according to a report from the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, collectively, Americans owe a record $1.17 trillion on their credit cards. And Didi, that's risen 8% since last year.
Yeah, it's a big issue. Janae, thank you. And for more on this Fact Check Team topic, including links to their sources, scan the QR code on your screen or visit thenationaldesk.com. The Justice Department will pay nearly $116 million to settle lawsuits over sexual abuse at a Northern California prison. More than 100 women sued the Bureau of Prisons over mistreatment while serving their sentence at the now shuttered Federal Correctional Institution. Each woman is set to receive about $1.1 million million. Lawyers for the victims said it was the largest deal of its kind reached with the Bureau of Prisons. The number of steps you take every day could lead to a reduction in depression. According to a new JAMA study, a higher daily step count is associated with fewer depressive symptoms, and taking just 1,000 more steps could reduce your risk of depression. The study's author says it's more evidence that activity is effective for preventing depression, no matter the type or intensity. Senator Josh Hawley is now planning to use next year's tax battle to boost the child tax credit. Axios reports Hawley wants to increase the $2,000 max to $5,000 per year. It would cause upwards of $2 to $3 trillion over a decade. That's the cost. Families could also receive installments throughout the year instead of one payment. Having your account spoofed or hijacked on social media like Facebook and Instagram can quickly turn into a nightmare. Spotlight on America discovered a sharp increase in complaints of social media related identity theft. And what's worse, national investigative correspondent Angie Moreski tells us all too often social media companies do little to help.
California mom Sonia Gomez was the victim of a Facebook takeover.
They had sent me something like at 2 in the morning saying that there was a login in Hong Kong.
Within hours, hackers falsely posted she had a new job at crypto.com and was helping people make big money.
Every time I would report it, they would respond like they don't see nothing wrong with this page.
It turned into a several-month ordeal to regain control of her own page.
Facebook will do absolutely nothing about it. Look at this.
Scott Vreeland of Georgia also says Facebook wouldn't help him when his deceased brother's account was hacked. Sean Vreeland was a disabled Army veteran. After he died of a heart attack in 2022, scammers took over his account, using it to pitch yet another cryptocurrency scam.
My brother was a hardworking man. He was honest. He was a veteran, and he really deserves to rest with a clean name and rest in peace.
Unfortunately, Vreeland and Gomez are far from alone. Earlier this year, a bipartisan group of 41 state attorneys general sent a letter to Meta, Facebook and Instagram's parent company, demanding immediate action to address what they called a dramatic and persistent spike in complaints about account takeovers and lockouts. No matter how frustrated you get, unfortunately, there's not much you can do, even if a social media platform won't take down fraudulent information. Those lengthy terms of service agreements most of us just click and accept are packed with legalese that overwhelmingly give the companies an edge if you try to sue.
We want to be able to shield people's identities from this kind of theft that happens online.
Orlando area Representative Darren Soto is pushing for Congress to do more to regulate social media giants. In April, he introduced the SHIELD Act to give social media users more legal rights to get platforms to take down false information and potentially sue if the companies don't do it in a timely fashion.
Why is this taking so long?
Well, there's a lot of powerful interests. There's a lot of disagreement. Some politics gets in the way. It's Congress's inaction that's the biggest problem right now.
Spotlight on America contacted Meta about the rise in complaints over account takeovers. A spokesperson didn't answer our specific questions, but sent a statement saying, "We know that losing and recovering access to your online accounts can be a frustrating experience. We invest heavily in designing account security systems to help prevent account compromise in the first place." Little comfort for social media users like Sonia, whose friend ended up being scammed by the hackers out of $15,000. It wasn't until our Spotlight partner, KMPH in Fresno, contacted Facebook on Sonia's behalf that the platform finally gave her back control of her own page. For Spotlight on America, I'm Angie Moreski.
TSA now wants you to make sure you arrive extra early for your holiday flight. Airports are expecting more people to fly than Thanksgiving starting this weekend and into the new year. In San Antonio, TSA says travelers should arrive at least 2 hours before your flight and warned that getting aggressive due to a missed flight can result in an arrest.
One of the things that happens when people are late is that they're stressed. When they're stressed, they get aggressive. Aggression at the airport usually ends up in arrest. We will not tolerate someone being abusive, yelling, shoving, doing anything like that, and we will call law enforcement.
And TSA is also advising that items such as power tools and cooking aids be checked. Solid foods are allowed. Still to come, our team of correspondents breaks down this week in Washington, from the future of TikTok to Trump's mass deportation plan.
And welcome back. Our Washington Bureau covers the nation's capital every day, and our team of correspondents reports on the important issues facing the country and how they impact you. The fight over government spending this past week featured Elon Musk and many conservative Republicans vocally opposing what they call reckless spending. National correspondent Matt Galka, is this signaling major changes for how future spending bills will be constructed?
Well, look, if there was any question about whether or not Elon Musk had any sort of influence, real influence or sway in Washington, D.C., I think what happened this past week kind of put that debate to bed. He led the charge against this continuing resolution that was set to keep government open. He led the charge on X, the platform he owns, and there was a deal in place, a deal negotiated by Republicans and Democrats, again, to a short-term funding bill. And he said, and he rallied Republicans, no, you should vote against this. All day Wednesday, he was posting about it, more than 100 posts about how this is wasteful spending. Your tax dollars are going to waste. And by Wednesday evening, Donald Trump and J.D. Vance came out against that bill, too. So, look, if, at least to Democrats, this is another form of governing by tweet. Some Democrats called him the shadow president, putting his fingers on the scale and again, wielding his influence against something he didn't like. And the main thing about this is to some of those conservative, more hardliner Republicans you're talking about, and to Elon Musk, this is supposed to be a government funding bill. But in this bill is a lot of other, they call it a Christmas tree, a lot of other gifts, a lot of other projects not related to just keeping the lights on in D.C. until mid-March. And that's what they're talking about. And some of the funding, I mean, there was disaster relief in there, and there was funding for farmers, but there was also pay raises for members of Congress, which a lot of people were opposed to. And there were some other pet projects that were being discussed and attached to this bill. And again, you have your more fiscally conservative members of the GOP who said, hey, wait a second, this is not what we want. We're not trying to increase spending. We're trying to cut spending. So whether or not this is how it's going to be in the future, I do know one thing. This is a preview of what the Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, will likely look like when the new regime takes over in January and they look to cut even more government waste. So we can expect a lot more of these tweet storms or social media storms if there's something out there that Elon Musk and some other Republicans don't like.
Yeah, no question, much more scrutiny on government spending come January. Meanwhile, TikTok on the clock as a ban on the Chinese-owned social media platform is set for January 19th. National correspondent Atra El-Nashar, TikTok's legal team will have a chance to argue its case to the Supreme Court just days before that deadline. What are we expecting?
Just a recap of how we got here. A law that was passed earlier this year means that TikTok has to be sold from its Chinese parent company ByteDance by January 19th or be banned in the United States. Now, TikTok doesn't want to be sold, and even if it did and there was a buyer who was able to acquire it, the Chinese government has the authority to block the export of its algorithm. So where we are now, there is no plausible buyer, there's no pending sale, and like you said, the clock is ticking. Exactly a month from now, it would be banned if nothing changes. So after two blows in court, where the appeals court and a lower court both agreed that the Congress and the president was right, that this is a national security concern, this law can proceed, TikTok went to the Supreme Court, filed an emergency ask, and said, please consider that this is a violation of the First Amendment. We were denied our due process. Please hear this case. Supreme Court could say no. They can take up whatever case they want, but thankfully for TikTok, the justices said yes. So on January 10th, the justices will hear arguments from TikTok, from the government about this law. But here's the interesting part, keeping us on the edge of our seats. The justices are not going to decide if they're going to pause the deadline until the day of arguments. So there's really three possibilities that could happen here, Steve. When they hear the arguments, they could put a pause on the deadline while they decide the outcome of this case, and then that could punt this into the Trump administration, and Trump could try and find a loophole in this law and basically extend the life of TikTok in the United States and just kick the can down the road. What TikTok wants to see, the second option, is the Supreme Court sides with them and says, yeah, this violates the First Amendment, you're good to go. Another scenario, which would really mess with, the clock in all of this, is the Supreme Court says, yes, we're hearing this case, but we're not going to pause the deadline. And the deadline comes and goes on the 19th. TikTok is banned. Google and Apple have to take it off of their app stores. And then it's gone. Trump takes office, tries to bring it back, and it just doesn't work. This is unprecedented. And also making all of this, more and more difficult is that it's just a really popular app. So people are going to be upset.
Yeah, millions and millions of people waiting to see what happens there. And quickly, President-elect Trump's deportation plan continues to take shape. National correspondent Christine Frizzell, what are we learning about how this is expected to look when Trump is sworn in on January 20th?
Yeah, the way this is all playing out has been very interesting. Unlike a lot of other people Trump has nominated to head certain cabinet posts, Tom Homan, who he's designated as his, quote, border czar, has really been out there speaking with different parts of the media just about every day. So we're learning some things. Just this past week, Tom Homan told us that on day one, in other words, on Inauguration Day, ICE agents will be out on the streets. They want to start rounding people up and deporting them with a focus on people who have already been convicted of crimes and people who have gone through their asylum processes and have been denied by judges. It's going to be interesting. Tom Homan also said they need more resources. They need beds, at least 100,000 beds. They need money. They need help from the U.S. military. So how that all plays out is going to be interesting. What we're seeing, though, is both sides of this debate really starting to gear up. We've seen, governors, Democratic governors say they're going to push back. Also, we saw 26 governors sign a letter saying they will help this effort and the Trump administration in any way possible. That includes the use of the National Guard. This is going to be a fight. It's going to be vicious, and it's going to happen soon.
No shortage of things to watch in the new year. Audra, Christine, Matt, thank you all for your hard work. Back to you.
Up next, first of its kind, the flying ferry that's set to debut in Lake Tahoe next year. Plus, demanding answers, families outraged after the graves of their loved ones are disturbed. The National News Desk team of reporters is bringing you the headlines from coast to coast. We're taking the pulse of America, and we start in Watauga Lake, Tennessee, where residents are banding together to clean the lake without federal assistance.
Using two barges connected together, the crew uses an excavator to pick up trees and other debris, placing it on the other barge. I spoke with Darren Clark, a resident here on Watauga Lake, who's organizing this cleanup effort. One of his many concerns, tourism in the county.
Water quality is everything. The tourism is the only thing this county survives on. And if If this is a contaminated lake, tourism's going to go away. My campground's not going to have people come to it. It's going to hurt everybody.
Clark says the cleanup is self-funded and there is a GoFundMe page to donate to the cause or volunteer to help. In Newark, New York, families who buried loved ones at Newark Cemetery are demanding answers after personal items were removed from gravestones. One woman, Mabel Murray, left a frog sculpture on her mother's gravestone. Murray says it had been there for 4 decades until last month.
It was just a part of her, and it's been a part of us for 40 years, and it's gone. Their stuff was just wiped off graves like it was nothing, like it meant nothing. And it meant something to somebody.
And the Village Board says it's reviewing cemetery policy and how to better handle personal items. In Lake Tahoe, Nevada, where the first flying electric ferry could debut by next year, the ferry would shuttle skiers, beachgoers, and workers across the lake in 30 minutes and cut down traffic.
Transportation solutions around the basin are so critical. They're so needed because we have narrow roads and we have to fit a lot of people on them.
The ferry would hold, look at that, 30 people, and founder Ryan Meinzer hopes to eventually deploy an entire fleet. Still ahead, a life-saving operation for a grandma in Alabama. The details behind the miracle treatment and its unlikely place of origin. Looking ahead, early forecasts show Christmas Day could be 10 to 15 degrees above normal for much of the country. It's expected to be unseasonably warm in the west and quite cold in the east. But even though it could be cold enough for snow in parts of the eastern U.S., the Climate Prediction Center says it is expected to be much drier than normal. 2 Chinese astronauts have broken the record for the longest spacewalk, spending 9 hours outside their spacecraft on Tuesday. The feat barely beat the previous record set by U.S. astronauts in 2001 at 8 hours and 56 minutes. China has been ramping up its space program with plans for a lunar landing by 2030. World powers have become increasingly interested in the moon because of the natural resources and national security. An Alabama grandmother received a kidney from a gene-edited pig in a rare procedure after years on the transplant wait list. 53-year-old Tawana Looney's transplant took place in New York last month. Her health is being monitored with the help of artificial intelligence to help spot any concerns. Looney is the only person in the world living with a functional pig kidney. And that'll be all for us on the weekend edition of the National News Desk, America's News Now. Don't forget, you can catch us live from 6 a.m. to 11 a.m. and 10 p.m. to midnight Eastern Time. Check your local listings. You can also watch us online and catch up with the latest headlines on thenationaldesk.com. Thanks for watching the weekend edition of the National News Desk. I'm Dee Dee Gatton, and from all of us here, have a great week, a very happy holiday.